We finance groceries now. In 2026, 1 in 4 people using Buy Now, Pay Later are reaching for it at the supermarket, taking out a short-term loan against next month just to eat this week. Not for a television, for dinner. And here's the part that should stop you. We are also budgeting harder than any humans who have ever lived. More apps, more spreadsheets, more advice than any generation before us. We have never tried so hard to control our money. And we have never been this efficient at giving our future away. That contradiction isn't a discipline problem, it's a design flaw, and I can show it to you with the numbers. Your brain was built to do one thing no budget can survive, to treat the person you'll be next year as a complete stranger. Now, before I take the usual advice apart, let me defend it, because you are not a fool for believing it. On paper, a budget is flawless. The math is grade school simple. Money in, money out. Keep the second number smaller than the first. People genuinely do it. The logic is so clean it doesn't feel like advice. It feels like arithmetic. So here is the real question. If the logic is perfect, if it's just subtraction, why does it collapse for almost everyone who tries, every time, around the same week of the month? Why does the cleanest advice in personal finance have one of the worst track records in it? The answer is uncomfortable. You don't fail because you can't follow the logic. You fail because the logic was aimed at the wrong enemy. And losing to that enemy is not free. Let me show you the size of the bill before I name who's collecting it. Take $200 a month. Not a fortune, the exact kind of quiet leak a budget is supposed to catch and somehow never does. Don't spend it. Invest it instead at the market's long-run average across one working life. Around $452,000. That's not the cost of one weekend. That's the lifetime price of a single sentence. Try harder. Repeated for generations by people who never once understood why it kept failing. So who is the enemy the budget was pointed at by mistake? It has a name, and it's been measured to the decimal. Present bias. Your brain does not see the future at full size. It shrinks it. A reward in your hand right now feels enormous. The identical reward a year out feels fictional, almost fictional. And because of that, economists have caught the human brain doing something openly irrational. Offer people $100 today, or $110 in a week, and most grab the 100 now. But offer that same 100 in 52 weeks, or 110 in 53, and almost everyone flips. Now they'll happily wait the extra week. Same 1 week, same $10. Opposite decision. The only thing that changed is a single word: now. Economists call that hyperbolic discounting. You already know it by its disguise. I'll start next month. It always sounds reasonable, and next month always says the same. You can watch it happen, live, inside the skull. In a brain imaging study from 2004, people chose between a smaller reward soon and a larger reward later, while researchers watched the lights come on. When one option was available right now, the ancient emotional core lit up, the same craving machinery that runs hunger and thirst. When every option sat safely in the future, a cooler region did the thinking. The prefrontal cortex, the patient planner behind your forehead. Here is the trap, in one line. Your budget is written by the planner. But the purchase is made in the moment, and in the moment, the planner gets outvoted by a system that is older, faster, and has never once read a spreadsheet. Your budget was never fighting the temptation in front of you. It was fighting your own biology, and it showed up to a knife fight, holding a pen. Now, why would a brain ever be built to undervalue its own future this badly? Because for nearly all of the time your brain was being shaped, the future wasn't a savings account. It was a gamble you might not live to collect on. A meal eaten today was certain. A meal saved for tomorrow could rot. could be stolen, could be lost to a winter you didn't survive to see. In that world, the one who took the sure thing now came out ahead of the careful one who saved for a tomorrow that never arrived. Discounting the future wasn't reckless, it was correct. So present bias was never a malfunction. It's the right answer to a brutal question. How much should I trust later? For almost all of human history, the honest answer was, not much. The wiring works perfectly. It's just still answering a question the modern world quietly stopped asking. Your tomorrow isn't a gamble anymore. Your brain simply never got the memo. You've probably heard the opposite, though. The famous marshmallow test. One child, one marshmallow. A second one promised if they can just hold out. For decades, it was sold as proof that willpower is something you're born with, and the kids who have it quietly win at life. Except the story didn't survive a closer look. Run on a larger, more varied group, the effect mostly dissolved once researchers accounted for one thing: the child's world. A kid who had learned that promises often break was being perfectly rational to take the sure marshmallow now. Their impatience wasn't a flaw in their character, it was an accurate read of an unreliable life. The same calculation your ancestors made, and the same one you still run every time you pay. Which is exactly why a budget, of all things, is doomed in the way it's doomed. Look at what a budget actually is. It's a contract. Present you signs it, future you is expected to honor it. I won't buy this today, so that a year from now I'll have more. But present bias means present you doesn't quite believe future you is real. That person is a rumor, a stranger you've never met, asking you to take a small, certain loss right now for their comfort later. So at the checkout, the sum your brain actually runs isn't this purchase versus my goals. It's a guaranteed good feeling, mine this second, against a vague maybe for a stranger eventually. Put honestly, the budget never stood a chance. Present you wins, not because you're weak, but because the vote was rigged the moment the ballot was written. And there's a second blind spot sitting right on top of the first. And together, they're worse than either alone. Your brain doesn't only shrink the future, it also can't feel compounding. Ask anyone to picture money growing at 10% for 30 years, and they draw a straight, gentle line. The real curve is nearly flat for years, and then it detonates, late. Most of that $452,000 isn't built by the money you'll save next year. It's built by the boring early dollars you were certain didn't matter. So the two errors point the same way, and they back each other up. Present bias whispers, the future barely counts. Your broken sense of growth confirms the sum is tiny anyway. One says, later doesn't matter. The other says, and it's small. Both are wrong, and both are wrong in exactly the direction that spends the money today. Now, before you decide the fix is to declare war on this circuit, you should know what else it does for you. The very same wiring that wrecks the budget is what lets you eat the meal in front of you instead of saving it forever. Take the chance while it's actually there. Love something now instead of in theory. A mind with no present bias wouldn't be a disciplined saver. It would be frozen, endlessly trading a real, present life for an imagined future one it never lets itself reach. So nothing in you is broken. You're running superb software. You're just running it on a planet it was never written for. Which means the whole strategy is upside down. We've been handing willpower a fight it's built to lose, in a moment that's rigged against it, and then blaming the loser. So the cure can't be more discipline. It has to be something that takes the decision out of present you's hands entirely and turns present bias from the saboteur into the engine. That move exists. It's 3,000 years old, and it's almost insultingly simple. Give me 60 seconds, and I'll hand it to you. The only thing that reliably beats a brain like this has a name: a commitment device. And the cleanest example ever written down is ancient. Odysseus wanted to hear the sirens. The song so beautiful it steered whole ships onto the rocks. He knew that in the moment he'd lose his mind and beg to be turned loose. So he didn't gamble on being strong when it mattered. He had himself lashed to the mast in advance while he was still calm, and ordered his crew to ignore every command he gave once the singing started. That's the entire secret. And notice what it is not. He didn't try to resist at the worst possible moment. He removed his own ability to choose before that moment, back when the planning version of him still held the pen. Every real fix for present bias is a version of that mast. You don't win the fight at the checkout. You make sure, while you're still calm, that the fight at the checkout is already won. And this isn't a tidy fable. It's been run on millions of people, and the results are almost unfair. Two economists, Richard Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi, built a savings program on one idea. Don't ask people to save money they have now. Ask them to commit a slice of raises they haven't been given yet. Future money. Money present you doesn't value, and therefore doesn't miss. In the first rollout, saving rates climbed from around 3.5% to over 13%. Not because anyone tried harder, but because the decision was moved somewhere present bias couldn't reach. Then the same trick rewired whole countries. Switch a pension plan from opt-in to opt-out. Same plan, same people, one flipped default. And participation jumps from roughly half to over 90%. No one grew more disciplined overnight. The mast was just built before the song began. That's the proof. You don't need more willpower, you need the choice made in advance, by the version of you that can still think clearly. And once a flaw in the brain is this reliable, you can be certain it's already an industry. It is, and right now, it's enormous. Buy now, pay later moved around $560 billion last year. One provider alone, Klarna, passed 100 million users. And it works by pulling a single lever. It hands present you the thing instantly and mails the bill to future you, the stranger present you was never going to defend. The pleasure is immediate and loud. The cost is distant and silent. And the data shows the footprint exactly. Around 40% of users were late on a payment in the past year. A quarter of them have no emergency savings at all. And on average, people leaning on these services hold roughly $12,000 less in savings than people who don't. The arrow may point both ways, but that is precisely the mark present bias leaves. You aren't really their customer. Your present bias is. They aren't selling you a sofa or a dinner. They're selling you the distance between who you are tonight and who has to pay when the bill comes due. Which leaves one last trap to defuse. The one hidden inside the fix. The most dangerous moment isn't the overspend. It's the next morning, when you blame yourself and vow to try harder next month. Because try harder is the strategy that already lost. Self-blame doesn't repair present bias. It just signs you up to run the same rigged fight again and lose the same $452,000, one reasonable purchase at a time. And there's a clean reason I'll resist next time is a fantasy. Psychologists call it the hot-cold empathy gap. Calm on a Sunday, planning the month, cold. You genuinely cannot feel how you'll feel on a tired Friday, with the thing already in your hand, hot. Cold you drafts the plan. Hot you has to keep it. And the two of them have never once been in the same room. So you don't beat present bias. You recruit it. You make the smart choice, the one that happens on its own, now, today, with no promise to a stranger required. First, build your mast. One automatic transfer that moves the money the day you're paid, before present you ever sees it land. That isn't a budgeting tip, it's Odysseus, tying himself down while he's still calm. A decision you never have to make can never be lost in the moment. Second, drag future you into the room. The vaguer later is the harder your brain discounts it. So make that person real. A name, a date, a number, a face. You can't save for a stranger. You can save for someone you can actually picture. Third, put the friction on now, not on later. Stop relying on resisting at the checkout. Make the checkout slower instead. Delete the saved card. Add the extra step. You're not summoning willpower. You're slowing present you down just enough for the planner to catch up and get a vote. Fourth, pay present you to wait. Give yourself a small, immediate, real reward every time the automation fires. Don't starve the circuit that runs you. Feed it for finally doing the right thing. So here's the one action before you click away. Not a budget. One automatic transfer, any amount, even $5, that moves the second you're paid. That's it. That's present bias, finally working a shift for you instead of against you. And if you want to see where these reasonable little purchases are actually born, the impulse itself, the first domino, before present bias even gets to vote. That episode is sitting right here. Watch it next and subscribe. We're taking these glitches apart one at a time, and they're all wired into each other. The ledger never closes. It only grows longer. Present bias is just one line in it, one entry. There are others in there, older, quieter, and they cost you more. Each one was a brilliant answer, once, to a problem the modern world no longer has. And each one is still charging you for the answer. They don't announce themselves. They don't ask permission. They just quietly move the number a little further from you every day. So we keep counting. Every hidden circuit, every silent number, until the whole bill is finally visible.